Okay, I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. We are going through so many topics this morning. Now, as if you ever want to contact the show, 706-889-9700 or chief@fetchernews.com. You can follow us on Twitter @FetcherNews, @FYNTV, and you can do that. Now, we know the deep state media, they're betting on, they're taking bets. The wager is the failure in North Korea. They are looking for, hoping that the whole North Korean summit with Donald Trump and John Bolton and Mike Pompeo has failed. They're hoping that. They're betting on that, and they're taking wagers, and they're looking for every way to consider it a failure. They have no hope and interest in peace or diplomacy. It's failure or bust with the media, many members of the media. But that being said, I want to stay focused on the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court, there's a couple things. There is the Society the Federalist Society, okay? And we'll go into that a little later, the Federalist Society. And the Federalist Society, if you're not aware of who they are, you can look it up, all right? And let me get down to their bottom here where I had some notes I was taking. And you have, what's that guy's name with the, he was on, Leonard Leo. Leonard Leo was on, I think he was he on with Chris Wallace? I can't remember. But anyhow, the Federalist Society. Donald Trump released a whole list of potential Supreme Court justice. Okay? Supreme Court justice, and he released an entire list of candidates so that they could be vetted through conservative groups, much like the Federalist Society, and get their recommendations or get their negative comments. So the group is acceptable according to so many conservative groups that the President of the United States is looking at. Now, my opinion is, and they're upset, they're concerned about Roe v. Wade, and they've brought out a woman, Susan Collins, from Maine, which is a Republican, and they're worried about Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion. Okay? Roe v. Wade is, now these are the ladies wearing the pink hats and fighting, but Roe v. Wade is in 1973, a landmark decision issued in 1973 by the United States Supreme Court on the issue of the constitutionality of laws that criminalized or restricted access to abortion. And what had happened there, and not to take up too much time, but just to put it together, is your Supreme Court, when you a citizen John Doe or Jane Doe, and you live in Georgia, and you have all these rights in Georgia, but then you decide you're going to move up to, and you get a new job, and you move up to, Utah. Well, they have different laws, and you don't have the same rights in Utah that you had in Georgia. Okay? So there are certain issues that the Supreme Court hears a case so that the law of the land, you'll hear the law of the land, you'll hear that comment, is that it supersedes state law, and they have certain issues that they don't want. It's just like the Supreme Court just heard the Illinois case there, and it's now the law on the land against the unions. So now the Supreme Court will make a ruling, and now it supersedes, and there's certain things that they call states have overstepped and is unconstitutional, and that a woman should have this, the ruling here in general is a woman should have the same rights every state line they cross and not be criminalized, restricted access to any abortion. All right? That's where Roe v. Wade comes into. For the biggest part, it legalized it through the Supreme Court, and it was found by some to be constitutional, which Scalia finds the argument there. Now, that's what's supposed to happen at the Supreme Court level, okay? Once they get up to the Supreme Court is supposed to determine and find whether it's constitutional or not. I had my Constitution right here just a minute ago. I don't know where I put it or took it to. But the Supreme Court, here it is. The Supreme Court is supposed to make a determination whether it's constitutional. And we'll get into that in a minute, what activist judges are. And you know, like Scalia said, he liked his Constitution dead, not living. So that's what's supposed to happen at the Supreme Court. Now, Supreme Court feels, Scalia feels the Supreme Court did not make the correct decision on Roe v. Wade, and it's not constitutional, although they did rule on it. You're going to hear established law. So these are the things you're going to hear: established law. That American people accept that abortion is established law. Okay? That's what you're going to hear. It's the law of the land. All right? Now, what has happened since Roe v. Wade is we have brought so many cases to the Supreme Court to try to break down the door jams or dismantle Roe v. Wade. You have out there, many of you, groups. And the Supreme Court has not opened the door to do that. So I'm going to give you something this morning. Two things on the Supreme Court. Number one, I think it should be a woman. Okay? Now, I feel, and this kind of got me in trouble the other day, so we'll go for it again. I think it should be Amy Barrett. Now, put up a picture of Amy Barrett. All right? I think it should be Amy Barrett. Why do I think it should be Amy Barrett? I think it's time, and I didn't pull their pictures, so don't get upset. Okay? I think it's time that women, now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she's going to pass on, I don't know. All right? Whatever. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I don't know what she represents on the court, but all jokes aside. Now, Elena Kagan, all right, and Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice, I feel you decide that the Latino community and the LGBTQ community are represented in maybe one of the two or both, but they're represented, okay? Old white men are represented, and African Americans, whether you like it or not, are represented with Clarence Thomas. Now, does this mean you have to always replace a justice with a justice? No. But I think it's time that women in America are represented on the Supreme Court, and I know this is going to get me in a lot of trouble, that don't think it's the end of the world to have children, that don't think it's the end of the world to get married to someone of the opposite sex, have children, call it a family, get a dog, we'll even throw in a cat, split up the errands between the husband and the wife, and you know who goes to soccer practice, who goes to baseball, who goes to swim team, whose turn is it to do the homework, and have a family in this country. I just don't think it would be the worst thing to represent women in this country on the Supreme Court that actually have a family and don't think it's the worst thing that ever happened. So that's my pick. Now, is it my pick just for that? No. I think Donald Trump will pick her. And I'll tell you why. Before I move on, I'll tell you why. Because Donald Trump likes all the picks he can get. Oh, yeah. So as they're going through, see, Donald Trump's already picked her. Amy Barrett is a United States Circuit Court judge of the United States Circuit Court judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit, who previously served as the Miller Research Chair of Law Professor at Notre Dame Law School. She was at Notre Dame Law School. But the point is, let me just get straight to the point. She is serving on the 7th Circuit. How did she get to the 7th Circuit? Donald Trump's already appointed her once. Well, he's appointed her once, so now he's going to appoint somebody else. No. Do you realize if he appoints her, one, how about Republicans that don't like women? That could help right there, number one. Two, she meets all the criteria that you and I, if you're a conservative, all right, want in a Supreme Court justice. Okay, I'm going to give you the last. Supreme Court justice. She is well liked at the Federalist Society, having trouble today. And this would mean that Donald Trump gets a second pick. So he's saying with her, I get 2. Yes, if he picks her, all right? If he picks her, then he gets to pick someone to replace her on the 7th District. Donald Trump is going to, this is driving the Socialist Democrat Party crazy because he is going to affect these courts for 40 years to come. He is putting conservative justice in these lower courts like you would not believe. Fastest in presidential history. We just got to get Jeff Flake and Mitch McConnell to get them approved and confirmed. But if he picks Amy Barrett for Supreme Court, he checks off a lot of things on the list. Not the county gets a second point. And for those of you out there that just like to hear this, for me, last but not least, she was the law clerk, and I want this picture up, Sam. She was the law clerk for none other than Antonin Scalia. There he is. So Amy Barrett, law clerk for Antonin Scalia, Notre Dame, Indiana, 7th Circuit, appointed once, is my pick. Now, abortion. I think I want to keep that as a clean segment. I'm going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about abortion and how they're nervous because abortion will be in the next list of Supreme Court cases the next session. And that's why it's important. And where do your candidates stand on abortion, not just saying it from